This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social. Delighted to be joined, as always, by Shane McGuigan. We're in Glasgow, ahead of Josh Taylor's IBF World Super Lightweight title fight with Ivan Baranchyk. How you doing, Shane?
Good, thanks, mate. How come I've got the OG rather than a new G in this interview? How come Ryan's not doing it? You did Taylor's, and I was expecting a new one. No, now I've got you, mate.
You want me to swap?
No, I don't. I want to. Yeah, I think we've got a good rapport. Go on.
We've got such a good rapport that we're actually doing exactly the same interview twice in a week. For those who are watching, we filmed a super exclusive interview to announce Lawrence OKOLIE being a member of your gym, and had some audio issues. So let's start there. Lawrence OKOLIE has joined McGuigan's gym. Tell me about that.
Exciting times. Yeah, I mean, in terms of how talented he is, he's had 12 fights now. He's already British and Commonwealth champion, and I think he's sort of cleaned up the domestic scene, as it were. And we're going to have maybe one more, and then we're going to move on to European and world honours. He's a blank canvas in the sense of how much improvement I've got with him, because he's got all the tools. He's 6'5", huge reach. And got serious punching power as well. So he needs to work a lot on his feet, needs to work a lot on punch selection, and then start implementing game plans and tactics. Because I think up until now he's just sort of been able to get away with making mistakes at that level, because he's better than these guys, and in the process he's made it quite a messy affair. But he's got bagfuls of potential, and I believe it's going to be a great fit. He's done 2.5 weeks of work now, serious work. We did a couple of sessions before then, and it's exciting times. I've got two best cruiserweights in the country in my gym. So everyone's saying, got a lot of people saying, how come I've taken him on with Chris Billam-Smith there? But I think they're at different levels, and the two of them can bring each other on leaps and bounds. Everyone struggles with sparring in the bigger weights. No one really wants to do any proper sparring, and a lot of time, you're sort of starving yourself for that. But I've got two guys in the gym now that can bring each other on, and it's going to be really exciting. I think that both of them will be rapidly improving.
Talk to me about how that came about, Lawrence coming to the gym. I know, I think we did an interview shortly after the Gail Eubank where you spoke about him. This is when he was lined up to fight Denis Lebedev, which we'll come on to. And I remember there being a bit of, what should we call it, social media flirting between him and yourself. Is that kind of the origin of it, or is it something that you'd spoke about before, or something you'd thought about?
Well, I think, he's been in the gym before. He was in the gym before the Chamberlain fight, and he was doing some sparring with Chris. I think he realised how much Chris had improved. He sparred him up at GB in Sheffield, and I sort of talked to him about what he needed to do right in that fight, and what Chamberlain's strengths and weaknesses are. And I think like a lot of people are very dismissive of him. I mean, he's a real nice guy. Sometimes he comes across a little bit brash, a little bit flash, but off camera he's a real nice, and he listens, and he's willing to learn. He was with Brian O'Shaughnessy a while ago. Then he changed to Barry Robinson, and I think with Barry's schedule, it was just here, there, and everywhere. He takes sort of short fight contracts and stuff, and Lawrence just felt like he needed some stability and structure, and wanted to be based in London. So it was a natural fit. With myself doing some work with, obviously linking up with Luke, that matchroom connection is back, as it were. It's like the gym's constantly like a revolving door. Some people come in, some people go out, and myself and Eddie have sat down, and I think Eddie will also look to push him my way as well. So it's exciting. It's exciting times, and I'm not going to go out bold, but I think he'll win a world title within 12 months, definitely.
What is it about Lawrence that attracted you to him? Obviously, he had a very, very short, fast amateur career where he achieved an awful lot in a short space of time. That's also transcended into the professional game. What about him has led him to do that, and what kind of enticed you, as it were, to take him on?
I think just his natural athleticism. You know, he's extremely strong, good puncher. You know, Chris has done a lot of sparring with a lot of cruiserweights, and it's not competitive, you know. But Lawrence and him, like, straight away, is really, really good quality spars. And I mean, just the fact that he's so big and awkward, Chris just comes away saying he's so effective. You know, if he could just learn to do certain things. So I think just settling him down, getting to use his jab, and I just believe he's got the ability and the size and the structure to move up to heavyweight. You know, this is always going to be a pit stop division, the cruiserweights. You know, there's the mega fights are at heavyweights. You know, and like, I believe he's got the ability to move up. You know, obviously he makes the weight comfortable, but you know, with his 26, you know, bigger guys fill out later. They fill out 28, 30, and you know, give me 2-3 years with him. I believe he'll be an extreme force. I think he'll win a world title and move up to heavyweight, and you know, potentially win one there.
And when you told me that you were taking Lawrence, one of the first things I thought, because a lot of people tend to talk about Lawrence on the inside. He's received a lot of criticism of the Matty Askin fight, even the Isaac Chamberlain fight, both ugly fights, even by Lawrence's admission. Whereas you're a trainer who, Josh Taylor works brilliantly on the inside. I mean, you improved George on the inside immeasurably, body punch and stuff. Is that the biggest area that you're looking to improve, or are there other facets of OKOLIE's game that you're still going to look to refine and polish?
There's so many things I can look at and work on. Can't take away his effectiveness as well. So it's that fine line, and that's why we need time to work together and figure out a style that's going to be very effective and gets results and looks pretty on the eye. Because sometimes he can hit guys and blows them out of there, and then the next time, you know, he's not in the most exciting fights. And I think, you know, he takes that quite personally because he wants to look exciting and he wants to make sure that people are supporting him. But you know, I've got an ability to work with guys on the inside. I think, but I think just making him aware that when he's in there, he's killing the clock for them, not for himself. You know, he's so effective at distance, and he's a hard puncher. All punchers need space and they need distance. So by him crowding his work and smothering it, it's actually benefiting the opponent, you know, and it's just being able to create that distance and be conditioned enough to do that for 12 rounds, because it's a rest. You know, it's a rest on your opponent, but it's also a rest on yourself. So making sure that, you know, he gets his condition up, and gets that distance control in a little bit more, and you know, in time, it's going to be it's all going to come together. I can see massive improvements already. You know, he sparred a guy the first week, and then and then the second week he sparred the same guy, and it goes like, you know, I can feel so much different. And he's teeing me up with a jab, and he's actually using the jab. So you take the tendency to pull with it before. But it's all confidence, it's all learning, and in time, it's all going to click.
Just final one on Lawrence. I mean, we alluded to it earlier on in the interview. Denis Lebedev, that was kind of the path that he was looking to take for the vacant WBA. That fight's now not going to happen. Lebedev, I mean, you told me last week, looking for retirement money, words that you used. In a way, is that kind of a silver lining for you as a trainer, that you've got a couple of fights potentially before you have to step up the levels that you can gel? So I know it's something that you've talked about in the past with fighters, having that kind of initial settling in process. Do you look at it like that?
Yeah, but I like challenges as well. I like challenges, and I don't think, you know, the winner of Riakporhe versus Crispin and Smith is the second best cruiserweight, you know, and it's going to be Crispin and Smith. So, you know, those two aren't going to be boxing, and I think he's going to move on to European level. And Dominic Hingle's got the European champion. And with the way that the tournament's going at the moment, Usyk's has moved up. The belts are becoming vacant, left, right, and centre. So, you know, for us, we need to sort of capitalise on that, get ourselves in the right position, and then, you know, look to be fighting for a world title in 2 fights time, 2-3 fights. That's what we want, and I'm going to be stressing that to Eddie as well, and Will and Freddie at AJ Management, because this guy, you think you're going to see the best of him when he gets tested and he's up against it.
Final one on all things cruiserweight before we talk about this weekend. Josh Taylor, Chris Billam-Smith, Richard Riakporhe, booked for July the 20th. I know both guys well. I think it's a great fight. Talk to me about the fight.
Great fight. Sells itself. Don't think we need to do any trash talking. I think, very, very confident of my man winning. But it's his first acid test and it's on TV. Riakporhe's had a little bit more experience when it comes to television, but not as much experience in the ring. He hasn't been boxing as long. So preparation-wise, we couldn't get a better sparring partner than Lawrence OKOLIE as well. He's a bigger, better, quicker version of Riakporhe. So Chris is going to be incredible. He's going to be perfectly prepared for it, all being that we don't get any injuries and we get into the ring on the 20th fit and healthy. I think you're going to see a win. But on the other side they got Mark Tibbs who's his coach. He's definitely looking better underneath him. There's a huge improvement between the Sam Hyde fight and then the Tommy McCarthy fight. But we saw enough in both of them to exploit some weaknesses. They're going to nick my cuts man, which is Jimmy Tibbs, which is a bit disappointing. But blood's thicker than water. So they're going to have to sort of let him go for that one. Might have a word with him when he comes up on Saturday. Actually, have a little word. But listen, all fun and games. It's going to be a great show. It's Dylan White's in a tough fight, and he's stacking the card. It's going to be a good night. Big lumps boxing each other, and I think we're the first fight on TV. So exciting. Tune in. CBS is going to win.
Well done. Final one on Chris. Something that I've spoken about with him over months, years. Being kind of the baby of McGuigan's gym has kind of, I don't know how to put it, but I mean, being around your Luke Campbells, being around George Groves, and before that having David Hay around the gym, etc. That surely has got to be a huge benefit to him, because even though he is still somewhat of an unknown quantity and untested at a certain level, TV level, having those kind of guys around him in the gym, Chris told me was effective at kind of making him first of all realise the size of the fight, but also realise that it's just another step in the journey. Do you see that for him?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's been in a great position the whole way through. He sparred David for the Bellew fight. He sparred him for the fight before. He sparred George as well. And that's how I started getting affiliated with Chris. And there's a couple of spaces that sort of present themselves in the gym. I don't really like to have a lot of fighters on my books. And I took him on, and I think, with his amateur pedigree, compared to the rest of them, he felt privileged to get that position. But he's equally as good as the rest of them. Do you know what I mean? He's equally as talented. He needs to believe in himself. And he's, and that was the issue at the start. You need to believe that you're as talented as these guys, and now he does. And I think you can see that in his performances, especially in the gym. And it's like one of those things. He boxed at the weekend. Hard to look good against guys that are coming in there just to get through the rounds, but still great shot to finish. Punching power's coming up, and he's a late bloomer. So, put him. He needs to be tested in live fights, and this one's certainly that. As I said, Riakporhe is the most dangerous fight out there. It's a much more dangerous fight than Isaac Chamberlain. A lot of people don't necessarily want that fight. You got Craig Glover as well, who's got beat. You got Watkins, that's got beaten by Chamberlain. I think besides Lawrence OKOLIE, he's the hardest fight. So Chris is up. He's up against it, but this is his time to step up to the plate, and I think he's got the capability of doing so.
Okay, turning our attentions to this weekend, Josh Taylor challenges for his first ever world title. Is it 15th fight?
15th fight, yeah.
Faces Ivan Baranchyk. A lot of will he, won't he, would he not. It is Baranchyk. Talk to me about the fight. It's going to be a great fight.
Great fight. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of ifs and buts, but he's here. And whether it was mind games the whole time, we don't know. The good thing is that we knew that we were boxing on May 18th, and we knew that, you know, no matter who it was against, it was going to be for the title, because the IBF were pretty strict and stern on the fact that he entered this tournament as a without a belt, and he won it within the tournament. The belt stays in the tournament. So, you know, great fight on paper, great fight. I believe it's going to be a great fight on the night as well. It's going to be guns blazing. Baranchyk said he's coming in to dethrone the hero, the Scottish hero, but Taylor's so up for it. He's bang up for it. You know, certain fighters, you can see them starting to overplay things in their head on fight week, and he's just so calm. Every time he stepped up, he's been stepped up. He stepped up to plate and performed, and this is just going to be another one. It's just for the big kudos at the end with the world title, but you know, there's certain people that want to win world titles, and there's other people that want to be elite fighters, and he wants to be an elite fighter. He sees this is my chance to announce myself as an elite boxer, and you know, get the whole of America and the UK behind him, and believing in him.
Now, similar to what we were talking about earlier with yourself and Lawrence, and different stages of your career, Baranchyk is now with Freddie Roach. It would seem to me that changing coach halfway through a camp before you defend a world title on away turf is probably not the best preparation. I mean, I'm sure Freddie Roach knows better than me, but is that something that you're looking at as an advantage to you going into this, or are you very much just looking at what you guys are doing as opposed to what's going on in the other camp?
Well, you're always looking for advantages, and if a coach says he's not, he's lying. You know, you want to be around. And the good thing is I'm around this hotel, and they're in the same hotel, but they've definitely got a good relationship. They're eating together. They're spending a lot of time together. You know, Josh, the last few days before the weigh-in, he stays at home, so they might be looking at me thinking, well, he doesn't have that good a relationship with Josh, but I've been training Josh Taylor since his debut, you know, when he was, you know, for 4 years now. So, and it does take time to build up that connection and that trust within each other. I think Baranchyk moving into Roach's camp, he'll look at all of his credentials and think this guy knows what he's talking about, so he's going to give him just as much, if not more, than what he was giving the Cuban coach before. But, you know, definitely some fundamental dynamic changes that, you know, in a hard fight when you're in a tough position might come back to haunt you. But it was, you know, it's his and his manager's decision to change camps, and you got to respect that, and you got to definitely respect Freddie Roach for everything he's done in the sport. He still wants to win. You know, we had a little chat earlier, and he's, you know, he's very confident. But I believe this is Josh Taylor's night, and you know, it's my first time up against Freddie Roach. It's something that I'm looking forward to as well.
Now, Josh, you sort of mentioned the fact that he's very up for the fight. He has a tendency to, in the past, to go over that edge a little bit, I think it's fair to say. What have you done, if anything, from your role to kind of make sure he doesn't do that? I mean, the Postal fight, he put a lot of pressure on himself, knowing the tournament was around the corner. This is now first world title in front of his home fans. Are there any things that you look out for? Is there any kind of, not necessarily signs, but things that you look for with Josh going into this fight to make sure he does stay focused on the task at hand?
I mean, I'm always on the phone to him, always on the phone, texting him, chatting to him, making sure he's okay, and making sure his weight's good, what he's eating. So he seems the calmest he's ever been, which is strange, you know. But as I mentioned before, there's certain fights that soak it up, and once the stage gets bigger, they just get more comfortable and calm. But you know, I think what you got to look at is the Victor Postal. He was a very experienced person. If you look at Ivan Baranchyk, he's not that experienced. He's younger than Josh Taylor. This is just as new to him as it is Josh. You know, he's just won the world title. It's not like he's been world champion for a time and been in high-profile fights. This is just as new for him as it is Josh, and we have to treat it as like that. It's just literally another sparring session, just another fight. This fight could be in a gym, you know, for you know, we care, because it's just another fight. It's just a way for him to win that belt, you know. And you know, you can't look at it as like I've got an advantage because I'm in my hometown and these people are here for me. It's just, go in there. It's neutral judges. Both, made the same weight, 10-pound limit the next day. So it's just keeping him focused and making sure that he doesn't feel like he's got to overdo it or overcook it. And he definitely didn't do that in training. We had a couple of lessons learnt in the Postal fight. He overcooked the training because he wanted to do a better job than Terence Crawford did. He was putting pressure on himself, and I want to stop him, and that's just a wrong mentality. So with this one, he's learnt his lessons, and it's been a short career, but it's been, he's had his ups and downs, and he's made sure he's learnt from every fight, and he's definitely done that.
You mentioned something very interesting there. It's something I spoke to Josh briefly about earlier, the rehydration clause of the IBF, 10 pounds for the next day. How does that change preparation? Josh has now grown into be a big super lightweight. Certainly on fight night he'll be the bigger man, although Baranchyk is very stocky. Yeah. Being the first time he's fought under those rehydration clause limit, that 10-pound limit, how will that affect his preparation? Or how will that affect your preparation? Because I interviewed George, and George said I would never have boxed for the IBF because I just couldn't do it. Like, there was no way. Josh, while not quite as big at the weight as George was, is still big at the weight. So how does that change things?
All my fighters tend to be big for the weight. It's an advantage that we look to get. But then there's different body shapes, and as you mentioned before, the very different body shapes between George Groves and Josh Taylor. So Josh doesn't put on as much weight. And for the last fight, I was aware that we were going to be boxing for the IBF in the next fight. So we checked his weight the morning of the Saturday, and he was within the 10-pound limit. So we won't do anything different in this one. He doesn't put much more weight on than 10 pounds, but the second day of eating and stuff, you're going to put another couple of pounds on as well. So it's just making sure we monitor it. But he's definitely very big for the weight, and we'll maximise that 10-pound limit, but he definitely won't go over it. And in the States, you get two attempts at it, but in the UK, it's just the one. So we've got to be professional about it and check his weight and make sure he's, certain things, like if you're eating too many carbohydrates, it can hold the water in the muscles and you might not dry out. If you're checking your weight every night, going to bed, and you're losing 0.6 or a kilo or 0.8 of a kilo, and then suddenly you've carved up and you only lose 0.4, then you're a pound over. You know what I mean? You're in a detriment. So that's why I did it last fight, and that's why we know what we're going to get, what we're going to be waking up this fight.
And before we get on to the undercard of Naoya Inoue, I was going to say co-feature, but we'll say undercard. I think the hundreds of Japanese journalists who are staying at this hotel would probably disagree with that. What have you made of the rest of the super lightweight tournament? So Regis Prograis, who now will await the winner of Taylor-Baranchyk in the final, stopped Kirill Relik. What did you make of his performance?
I thought it was very good. I thought he looked slick. He looked composed. Going into the tournament, he didn't show that side to him. He was a bit more on the front foot, sort of making statements. He's done everything right. He's done everything right up until now. He's entertained. He's beat everyone that's put in front of him, and he's dropped a lot of them as well. So he's obviously clearly very, very heavy-handed. But we had a little word with Relik's manager, and really struggled to make that weight. Apparently, went up pretty high in between camps, and he wasn't his best in the fight. So, on one hand he looked sensational, on the other hand wasn't the best Kirill Relik. But we've got to get through this one. It's up to me to look forward, but it's up to Josh Taylor to just stay disciplined and fight on Saturday. And I think it's going to be an extremely tough fight, albeit that we get through this one. But once again, we've got a very good southpaw in the gym. We can do some good quality work. We've got, Luke Campbell boxing LOMA-CAMPBELL, and Josh Taylor's a very good replica, as it were. Similar styles. He can do that shifting and come forward, and Campbell can sort of box the back foot and walk you onto solid body shots. So there's some good sparring.
Now we'll come on to Lomachenko-Campbell shortly after for the second time, because that's something else that we covered last week. Really annoying. The exclusive. That was great. Naoya Inoue versus Manuel Rodriguez. I wouldn't say it around Josh Taylor, but I'm really looking forward to that fight. I think that has has a bit of an epic fight written all over it. What did you make of that fight?
Who are they?
Here you go.
Nah, I mean, I'm a bit gutted as well because I'd love to see Inoue in the flesh, you know, see him sort of listen to his punches. I was gutted that he didn't do any punching that public workout.
You told me he would do punching.
I said we're not going to do some punching, so you better hope that Inoue does because there's, you know, those are the two fights you come out to watch, and you agreed. So that was, you know, but you got Baranchyk. I'm joking.
While we're on that subject, no. While we're on that subject, I know in the past, I mean, certain other trainers reluctant to do pads. You don't want to show their hand. I mean, we saw today only 1 out of 4 fighters did pads, which for me, in my job, is terrible because everyone loves to see people smash pads and what.
I like to label it.
I like to label it smashes pads. Yeah, definitely, all about that. Is that how much of that does that play on your mind, or is it what kind of mitigating circumstances can lead to fighters just doing a bit of shadow boxing or just having a little move around, weight, not wanting to give tactics away? Does that all play its own part?
Well, not even tactics, just I've done pads in the past, but we got into that gym and it was roasting, so I just thought, do you know what, just do a little shadow. We did a good session on last night. We did our last punching session last night and did like 6 rounds flat out on the pads, and it's enough, you know, like last week we want to save it, so he's ready, he's ready to go. His weight's the best it's been, and I couldn't be bothered to risk him overdoing it in the heat, and you know, because their calories are coming down, they're starting to make, you know, championship weight, and just no point. We've done all our work, and for the sake of you getting a few extra hits, I just thought, you know what, nah.
So with that being said, can you take anything from the fact that Baranchyk decided to hit pads?
I don't know if they just got off the plane. I don't know what their thought process was there. He's training in LA. He's probably used to the heat a lot more than we are. And you know, Freddie's a guy that loves to catch mitts. So he's probably over here with just Baranchyk, his only fighter. He probably thinks, oh, you know, I'll get a little bit of mitts in today.
How much does having, I mean, something that we spoke about off camera, how much does having, I mean, someone like Inoue who has got a track record of blasting people out inside a round or two, you mentioned it off camera about kind of the warm-up process and waiting in the change room for a guy who could end the fight in the first minute or two, or Rodriguez. How does that change things, particularly with someone like Taylor, who is very much likes his warm-ups, likes to have things done a certain way? You've got somebody who could potentially get you in there a lot sooner than you can expect.
Yeah, that's something, as I said, we were talking off camera. I probably would have liked to have kept it off camera, but no, I'm joking. The tournament gives you the earliest and the latest times, and it's normally a half-hour window, so it's quite a long time when you start warming up, and you've got to be ready for that, say, 10:15, and then it could be 10:45 latest. So, but when you're going into your 15th fight, when you've been boxing eight years, or 8-9 years at Taylor's, he's been boxing since he was 16, so he's been boxing 11 years of that. When you've been doing it that long, it's natural. You know, you just get used to it. And if they said, the thing is, when you spar, you don't have a 30-minute warm-up, 45-minute warm-up. You have 5 minutes max. Josh tends to have maybe 15, 20 minutes, but he's always good to go when we put the head guard on. So there's no difference. It's just more of the waiting around. This tournament tends to do like 5-minute ring walks, you know, and they like to stand off and do the gladiator theme with the lights, and you can get cool. You can cool down. And when you got someone like Inoue, is such an explosive puncher. Could be gone in the first minute, could take him out or get taken out in the last minute of the 12th. So we just got to make sure we're like simmering. Think about it like a chef. He's just simmering. It's not overcooking, but he's just, yeah, I'm not going to go on anymore.
So worth pointing out that when we were discussing this off camera, Shane said,
Gordon follows me on Instagram. Gordon follows me on Instagram. Big shout out to him because he can maybe give me some cooking lessons.
Name dropping Gordon Ramsay in mind.
He's a good boxing man. He loves all my fighters. He enjoys it. He enjoys his boxing. So he's probably watching this, probably giving you one of your 2,000 views or something. So that's it. He's a good guy. if he does want to give me some cooking lessons, I could do it. I could do with some of that because I'm just terrible.
Coming to the fight at the weekend?
No, he's not. No. Ellie was going to as well. Ellie Goulding as well, but they both just done me. So I ain't got no. I've got no VIPs. Plus, Sauerlands don't give any tickets out. So got Lawrence OKOLIE coming up.
Is he? He told me last week that he wasn't going to come.
He's coming up tomorrow. No one wants to spar him over here, so you and Ryan could jump in.
I'm far too heavy for Lawrence OKOLIE at the minute.
Yeah. No, you're not. I look at the taxi driver. He could jump in. He's about 6'8", so he's the guy that's been driving us around all week. I think we get a couple of rounds with him. He looks proper hard.
It was pretty solid, doesn't it? We've mentioned it. Luke Campbell versus Vasyl Lomachenko. The one interview that I did manage to get, other than CBS, but CBS is well aware of where he falls on my priorities. Sorry if you're listening, Chris. Yeah, Lomachenko versus Luke Campbell came out of the blue. I was actually just randomly in the gym, and then kind of all hell broke loose on Twitter with the WBC. As I understand it, you're already shaking your head.
No, I'm shaking my head that you managed to be in the gym at that exact time. I was talking to Eddie Hearn for 45 minutes outside. You go, where are you? Are you coming in? I'm just seeing these things. It's like he's done us. He's just got the exclusive. I thought I'd hold it back, but then you were straight on it. You know what I mean? Straight. Luke, do you have anything to? I ain't got really much to talk about. So what should we talk about? And then you just bing, Campbell versus Lomachenko.
See, Eddie actually messaged me because we're really good pals.
Yeah. At least he's messaging someone.
Moving swiftly on. Yeah, trying to think of what we covered in the interview.
What we covered back then.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the fight, aren't we? So.
Tell me about the fight. Luke seemed to be kind of, I don't know what the word is, gullibly excited to box the best fighter in the world, I think is fair to say, which isn't always people's immediate reaction, I would imagine, when fighting somebody of Vasyl Lomachenko's caliber. What does that say about Luke Campbell?
That he's gullible. That he loves boxing, that he wants to challenge himself against the best out there. From a coach and advisor, I would like him to have boxed Devin Haney, because I think that's a great exposure fight, because he's got a big exposure in the US, but the WBC did their business, and yeah, he's jumped himself into the mandatory spot, so we're going to box him. That's the way it is. So you got to box who you put up against, and there's always going to be a fight down there on the line. Personally, I believe we could have won a WBC and then boxed him for a unification. We're now going into it as a mandatory challenger, boxing for the vacant belt against the guy who's got 2 other belts. So it's still a win-win, isn't it? And hopefully we can get it over in the UK.
What are your thoughts on the way the WBC have handled the situation? I spoke to Mauricio later that day. He said that there is precedent for this. I think they ordered Kovalev versus Stevenson for the light heavyweight title a number of years ago. But I mean, other than that, I can't really remember anything. It was a big surprise to everybody. I mean, Eddie labelled it ridiculous. I think they had some things to say about each other. What's your feelings on it? Is it just kind of, that's boxing? Or
It's money. So he looks at it and thinks the most amount of money, I want Lomachenko. I mean, you got a guy who's got that much of a following. Every Instagram post he puts out, it's doing great numbers. Every time he boxes, it's packing the place out, and TV networks want to be associated with him, and so do governing bodies. So the governing bodies are going to chuck him into the ratings, and he's great for the sport, though. He is great for the sport, Lomachenko. He's brilliant. He's a fantastic fighter, and Mauricio wants to make the big fights. He wants the superstars, and that's it. When we're in that position that we get a chance to box the pound for pound best fighter in the world. And if he beats Lomachenko, when he beats Lomachenko, it's going to just change his whole entire life. And he's got the style to beat him. He's got length on him. He's got the distance control. He's got the amateur pedigree. Punches very, very hard. He's going to be setting traps. Like, no disrespect to Anthony Crolla, but he was tailor-made for Lomachenko. Lomachenko said, "Who's his hardest fight?" in a recent interview out of the ones that were potential fights, and he said Luke Campbell. So he knows this is going to be a really hard fight. He's just coming off a broken hand as well. So depending on when we can push it, the whole point about us sitting there mandatory for such a long time is we wanted to fight for the world title in the summer. And we can't have a guy that's got 2 other belts come in to fight for a vacant title, trying to demand us to push our date back. We want to be boxing in July, and if not, we want the earliest compromise. So these things are a long way off from being finalised, but it's going to be Luke Campbell versus Lomachenko for not just the WBC but for three world titles, and it's a huge fight for him, and it's one that I think it's going to change his life.
Would you have preferred this fight to? I know you've mentioned kind of from a business point of view is probably the angle you're going from. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's more business. It's not the fact that it's going to be a more dangerous fight. It's just from a business standpoint. We've got a chance to. We have a contract in place with Matchroom USA Boxing. We have a chance for him to get a couple of big fights out there in the States that are going to put him in his own right being a huge name and give him the credit that he deserves. So he hasn't had the credit since the Olympics, and he's always been putting hard fights. As far back as Argenis Mendes, and I wasn't working with him in these fights, but Ivan Mendy as well, hard fight. Linares was probably peaking then, he looked like he overcooked it a little bit against Lomachenko, and then he got beat. So he's been chucked in very hard fights the whole way through his professional career, and and the thing is, you don't want that all the time. You want a couple of easy touches, build the confidence, make sure you learn it, and then challenge yourself. But we had that in the last fight. We had an easy touch. He looked sensational. Knocked the guy out, and now we're in with Lomachenko.
Okay, well, moving away from your current stable of fighters, one of your ex-fighters has been in the news a fair bit lately. George Groves, is he making a comeback?
I rang him the other day. I said, "You're going to make this comeback? Listen, mate, the gyms are going. The spaces in the gym are going real quick. So And then his missus rang me and they joked about it and stuff. Listen, he's content in retirement. He's made a lot of money. Been in huge fights from when he was 24 years of age till he's 31. Gone out the top. Is it Carl Froch's way just to keep himself in the limelight? I don't know. If he wants to have another fight, he might have left it a little bit too long. And that's why he's trying to choose his ideal dance partner. But it sells, but you know what, like, you're going to end up being another Chris Eubank Jr. and Nigel Benn talking about it 30 years on, like, you've had your moment, sort of just leave it at that. So yeah, I mean, not saying that George would ever shy away from it, but his fighting data are done, you know what I mean? He's excited about this next chapter in his career, so yeah. Would
you advise George against it if he asks for your opinion? Has he asked your opinion?
If he asked me to train him for FROCH 3, I would 100% train him. If he asked me to train him against Chella Rendell or someone for a Southern Area title, I would still train him. That's my loyalty to George Groves. It's not, I just want to see him healthy. I would advise him against things, but if he was completely and 100% adamant that he wanted to do something, of course I'd go with him. So, but yeah, it hasn't got to that stage yet.
Okay.
He's been retired a little bit. I mean, he hasn't had 3 years on the couch, or whatever it's been, 3 or 4 years.
Looks like he's had 3 years on the couch.
That's extremely disrespectful.
George could say a lot worse about me, and I'm sure he would.
You've had 8 years on the couch eating Dominoes.
Eating the couch. Since the last time I spoke to you. Oh yeah, don't even start. And he's only just started at Boxing Social as well, like this time next year.
You've got a Domino's loyalty card. That's the problem.
Right, stop insulting the staff. Canelo Jacobs. Thoughts? Now, last time I spoke to you in the interview that never was, you hadn't watched the whole fight. Still spoke about it for 5 minutes. There we go. Have you watched the whole fight since?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've watched the whole fight. Do you want me to tell you why I haven't watched it? Because my Sky is not attached to my TV. So the missus decided to rearrange the house, and she's put the TV on top of cupboard, and with that it's taken it away from the bracket and it's taken it away from the Sky box, and I haven't got enough intelligence to run a cable through the wall and link up my Sky box, so that's why I didn't watch it initially. It's now on YouTube. Watched it and think it was just, it was a bit tame, wasn't it? It didn't catch the fireworks that we expected. Canelo looks like he was cruising, looked like he was in control, and a few rounds ended up getting close. But it was a bit like the Cotto fight, Canelo Cotto. He looked like he was in control of it, and it ended up being a little bit closer because he's quite lazy. Well, he works when he needs to, I just think Jacobs was poor with that jab and allowing him to move his head. With a guy that's got great head movement, got to go to the body. And he started doing that too late, you know what I mean? He was pawing with a jab and looking for the right hand over the top, and it wasn't there because he's got a good enough chin that he can stay there, slipping and sliding and pulling away from shots, and he looked class early on, and then then Jacob started getting back into it, but it was too little, too late, and I think the whole time Canelo was in control of it.
You mentioned that kind of slipping and sliding, and certainly I was really impressed with the upper body movement and the head movement, sort of bending at the waist from Canelo. How good of a fighter is he? I mean, I know you did your pound for pound top 5 on Instagram the other day. You forgot to put Terence Crawford in there.
I did it quick, didn't I? I did it quick, and also I think Spence beats him. So, Spence.
Does that make him a better pound for pound fighter though?
Well,
Crawford started lightweight.
Yeah, I know he did, but he's now welterweight, isn't he? So, yeah, you're right. I mean, does he have the potential to move back down to 140 pounds? I don't think so. He's now filled out. It's like saying, Manny Pacquiao could probably make 140, but he could never make 122, or even 118 when he was a flyweight. So, what we talking about now?
How good is Canelo?
He's brilliant. It's brilliant. I love watching him. I just love that old school head movement. It reminds me of like a Duran, Chavez, so calm. He's like the equivalent of watching Roger Federer play tennis. He just glides across the ring and makes it look easy, but it's not. It's at live speed. These guys are trying to take his head off, and he's just slipping and sliding and pulling. It's unbelievable to watch. And he's really small. The fact that he's doing this against these guys that are so much bigger than him, he's like one of those guys that's just gifted, isn't he? He's proper gifted.
What would you like to see him do next? I mean, people are talking about the Demetrius Andrade fight. Obviously, the Golovkin trilogy is still there. DAZN want to make that fight. Either of those fights interest you?
I like the potential of him fighting Callum Smith, but the size difference would look ridiculous. I mean, Rocky Fielding was a good 2 inches shorter than Callum Smith, and even then the size difference looks crazy. So I like that as an option. I'd like to see how Golovkin gets back in the ring with Jonathan Banks, and then Demetrius Andrade. I mean, I don't know. I just don't think he's that. We haven't seen enough of him. Do you know what I mean? Potentially Billy Joe Saunders. If he can do something and win a world title, potentially a really good fight as well. I think he caused him some real problems. So I remember sparring Billy Joe a few times. He was like couldn't hit him with a bag of stones. So Canelo's normally the guy that's making people miss, making people overreach, and because he's so quick, I think Styles will be a great fight, that one.
Yeah, we've also seen kind of movers or people with the ability to move cause Canelo problems, admittedly in earlier stages of his career. Do you see Billy Joe Saunders hanging around 168 pounds? I mean, he's boxing for the WBO title this weekend, actually. Again, it's kind of similar with the Canelo and Callum Smith. If you put Billy Joe Saunders next to Callum Smith, it would look quite the disparity. Do you think 168 is potentially a temporary stop for him?
As in to come back down? I don't know. He's quite a big frame. He's struggled to make 160 pounds. Stars make fights again. I would look at Callum Smith versus Billy Joe, and I think Callum Smith beats him. But Callum Smith's he literally is like looking across at a cruiserweight. I looked at him when George was boxing in Saudi. I thought he's 6'4". He's enormous and like very technically well schooled as well. So I think, I don't know how long he's gonna linger it. I think Canelo's team will probably look at that and think it's a hard fight. But he keeps showing us that he's willing to take all these risks all the time. He really could. He's got that big now, Canelo. He could just take a couple of easy fights and just have a few defences and then go into the movies or something. But he wants to challenge all the top guys. So we may see it. Mundo versus Canelo.
Canelo Mundo sounds like a sort of old school. Yeah. Before we wrap up, let's talk about the heavyweights. Again, we spoke about it last week, but let's talk about it again, this time with the mic plugged in. Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz. Thoughts?
If Joshua knocks him out in 2 or 3 rounds, everyone's going to say it's a farce. But Andy Ruiz arguably beat Joseph Parker. He was in his backyard in New Zealand, and it was a close fight. And I think stylistically, Parker sort of moved away from him, and AJ completely nullified Parker. But I think stylistically, him coming in, doing a Povetkin-esque sort of winging shots over the top. Can he punch as hard as Povetkin? No. Is he as tough as Povetkin? No. Is he maybe a bit faster? Maybe a little bit fresher? So I don't know. I think this could be a potential banana skin for AJ, because he's been in camp a long time, since September the 22nd. He could just have. Everything's new to him. He's going out to Miami. He's training there now for the next 3 weeks, and then he's going to go up to Madison Square Garden. But my heart says it's not going to go 3 or 4 rounds, and you're going to blitz him, and everyone's going to say, "Look at the state of Andy Ruiz." But it's a decent fight. It's a decent replacement. This after the scandal that was Jarrell Miller.
Ooh, just going to go on to that. Thoughts of Jarrell Miller? Failed not 1, not 2, but 3 drugs tests. Still waiting to kind of find out what's going on with that. Just your thoughts?
Can't be good, can he? I mean, my thoughts. I mean, I'm not going to go in and say he should be chucked in prison, because he's going to be in. He would have been in there at a massive disadvantage to be boxing AJ anyway. But it's just never good. It's never good to see guys disrespecting the sport and taking that amount of shite. For what? For an edge? I mean, how has he been? What's he been doing in the past? Has he been doing this in the past? Has he been properly drug tested? He's been boxing guys, but they've been for minor titles, and then suddenly he gets his moment and he fails 3 tests. It's pretty disgraceful. And the team around him, I know, because I know the Wassermans very well, I know Dean and Duncan very well. They were really felt hard done by, because they put so much time into him, and when the first test came out, they rang him and asked him, and he was still denying it. And then you can't deny 3 tests, so it's never good.
I think that's I met Jarrell Miller a few times. Always found him very engaging, very nice guy. I think I've said this on camera before, so I'll say it again. I think I'm never quite surprised when a fighter fails a drugs test these days. I think if you're kind of around the sport long enough, it kind of pops up. No pun intended. But with Miller coming out and so vehemently denying it, only for 2 days later to release an apology, is that not almost as bad as it happening in the first place? But is it? You see what I'm sort of trying to say? Just coming straight.
I'm going to go in on one. I'm going to say this is modern day society. Like, oh, I can do something bad, and then 2 minutes later I can just apologise for it. It's like, no, if you've done a sin, you've got to pay for it. You can't have a 6-month ban. And if you say something to a fighter, and then, you know, you have the fight, and then suddenly you're making up. Once again, it doesn't allow you. You shouldn't be allowed to say these sort of things. You need to be, you know, you need to thinking before you're saying stuff, and especially you're in against the, you know, you got this is arguably the biggest name in boxing at the moment in AJ, and you've just completely made this sport look a farce. I mean, they haven't had a real big name in America. I know Deontay Wilder's a world champion, but he's not a massive household name, and you know, this is the time that AJ was going to America and going to be, you know, putting his belts on the line and bringing a huge show to New York, and he's just completely done himself, and looked like an absolute plonker in the process. So it's bad for the sport as long as and you know, modern day society with these ways of just sort of pouring your heart out on social media doesn't make it right, you know.
Just picking it up there, so a quick battery change. Luckily nothing wrong with the audio. Well, hopefully, a little bit too soon to tell. Please don't be. Back to Jarrell Miller, make a good point there. What would you like, forget him in kind of the name, I think the case is still kind of relevant to what I'm about to ask. What would you like boxing to do overall to kind of, to clamp down on it? Just in general, kind of this seems to be a doping culture.
Yeah, sure. 1 substance, 6 months, 2, 12, 3, 18 months. And I mean, and then add them all together. Do you know what I mean? So it should be a 3-year ban. Because really, or first strike, you should get 6 months. If you got 3 substances, it should be 18 months. If you're doing it consecutively, I mean, how many times has Luis Ortiz tested? You know, how many times has Shannon Briggs tested positive? Like, these guys need to have like their license stripped and taken away. Because if you don't punish them, they're going to keep doing it. And if you don't make a mockery of it, it's going to continue to happen. And it's like, it's so bad for the sport. And you know, for all we know, there could be fighters that are still out there doing it and getting away with it. And that's the problem. These other fighters, they know that certain people are on it, and then they're thinking, all right, well, I'll try and test it, but they just haven't got the right intelligence behind them and the right person in their team, and they're failing these tests. It just needs to be like, the random testing is great, you know, but if you look in my gym, you know, Campbell gets tested all the time, Taylor gets tested all the time. I've only just started working with Lawrence, but I'm sure because he's a champion, he'll be getting tested all the time. But guys, for the first year or 2 years, they don't get random tested. You know, they probably get tested more times in the amateurs. So the guys coming through, if you're fighting non-contest, just journeyman for 2 or 3 years, and you're just building yourself up from performance-enhancing drugs, and then you get it out of your system when you fight on titles. Like, where's the proof and the evidence there? You know, because there would be people doing that. You know what I mean? When the BBBSC give their licenses out, and these other governing bodies, and it's up to WBAs and the IBFs and everyone to just clamp down on this. You know, it's also the substance. I don't know a lot about it, but you know, when it comes to like Lucas Brown getting done for clenbuterol, Canelo did the same thing. Clenbuterol, Billy Joe Saunders got done from a thing in his inhaler, looking for minor edges, and then there's other people looking for huge edges with steroids and EPOs, and you know, whether they look at the substance and then the benefits of the substance and then look to get a greater ban, I don't know. But then it just allows people to just think, well, I'll only get 6 months there, so I'll just take that. And like, really, what's 6 months ban? Like, when David A was in the peak of his career, he was boxing like once every 10, once every 12 months. Like, that's a 6 month ban, if you know what I mean, if someone was tested, and then they've got another 4 months training. So it's like, it's a bit of a joke.
Not to put you on the spot, would you ever work with someone with a doping conviction?
No, definitely not. If they had a previous doping conviction before they came to me, I wouldn't work with them. And if they did a Kid Galahad and they took something that their brothers said that they would spike them or whatever his story was, I still wouldn't work with them, because you know, you are a product of your fighters, and if you've had a couple of bans in your gym, it just looks bad on you.
I think that's very noble of you. I think we're probably about there. Do you know what the problem is? I can't really remember what we spoke about and what we didn't. So we'll leave you to watch Game of Thrones. What are you doing?
Doing an advert just in case I've got any endorsements. Now I'm only on season 2, so all these memes and all these things coming out, I have no clue what's going on in Game of Thrones. I'm just a raw novice, just listening and learning and getting into it, getting into Khaleesi. Love Jon Snow, Snow of the North.
It's just Snow of the North. I won't ruin it for you. But okay, well, Shane McGuigan, been a pleasure doing this exact same interview again.
You're going to edit this whole last 15 minutes section where we're just chatting? No, or are you going to keep it in?
No, I'm going to keep it in for sure. That's where we're talking about drugs. I'm going to make the headline Shane McGuigan slams drug cheats.
Yep, slams drug cheats and doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. Just a boring dude, boring guy. Getting into half marathons these days. That's my goal.
Yeah, you said about that. Why is that?
Because I'm getting too jacked. So I need to just trim this muscle down a little bit. You know, just
Clenbuterol.
Something to train for, something to do. Getting back in. I didn't train. I genuinely didn't train for 2 years. I just thought, I'm in the gym every day. I'm sick of it. You know, and just decided why not get back in it. Good for the old headspace. Jim McDonald came in my gym the other day and he tells me how much he runs. I just thought, I need to do a bit of a Jim McDonald. I need to get on it, because he's like way leaner than me and he's 58 or something. So I thought, I need to do that. Good for the headspace.
Can you do a Jim McDonald impression?
Nah. He's a 15-round fighter. I probably could, but yeah, nah.
That wasn't bad. Shane McGuigan, as always, real pleasure catching up with you. Look forward to seeing Josh Taylor in action this Saturday, although I'm sure I'll see you before then.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll pester me and give me endless WhatsApps and texts.
Well, to be fair, we could end up doing this exact same interview again.
Yeah, it could be done. So let's hope. Let's check it now, and then we can just do it straight off, and then I can go watch Game of Thrones.
You got a deal.
Mate. Thank you.
Thanks very much.